Have you ever wondered if there could be a link between a common stomach infection and the risk of developing Alzheimer's disease? Today we're exploring a fascinating topic that recent studies have brought to light. We're delving into the potential connection between H. pylori infection, a bacteria found in the stomach, and an increased risk of Alzheimer's disease. This might sound surprising, but the science is incredibly intriguing. But how exactly does a stomach infection like H. pylori relate to Alzheimer's disease? Let's dive into the science. Firstly, we need to understand what H. pylori infection is. Helicobacter pylori, often shortened to H. pylori, is a type of bacteria that tends to make its home in the stomach. This little intruder is incredibly common, with about 2/3 of the world's population carrying it. But don't worry, not everyone who has H. pylori will fall ill. In fact, for many people, it doesn't cause any symptoms at all. However, when H. pylori does decide to make its presence known, it can lead to some pretty unpleasant conditions. This is because H. pylori can damage the protective lining of your stomach and small intestine. This can lead to open sores, known as ulcers, forming in these areas. H. pylori can be transmitted in several ways. It might be through contaminated food or water, or even through direct contact with the saliva or other bodily fluids of an infected person. This is why it's incredibly important to maintain good hygiene practices, like washing your hands regularly and thoroughly. Now let's talk about the prevalence of H. pylori. It's estimated that over half the world's population has this bacteria in their stomach. That's a staggering number, isn't it? But remember, not everyone who has H. pylori will experience symptoms or complications. When complications do occur, they can be quite severe. The most common are stomach ulcers and gastritis. Gastritis is an inflammation, irritation, or erosion of the lining of the stomach. It can be acute, happening suddenly, or chronic, occurring over a prolonged period. Stomach ulcers, on the other hand, are painful sores that can be found in the stomach lining. Both of these conditions can lead to serious complications if left untreated, such as an increased risk of stomach cancer. Now that we know more about H. pylori infection, let's move on to Alzheimer's disease. So, what is Alzheimer's disease? Alzheimer's disease is a neurodegenerative condition that affects millions of people worldwide. It's named after the German psychiatrist and neuropathologist Alois Alzheimer, who first described it in the early 20th century. This disease is characterized by progressive memory loss, difficulties with problem solving, and a decline in other cognitive functions. It's as if the brain's powerful computer system starts to malfunction, with files being misplaced or deleted, and the processor becoming slower and less efficient. At the heart of Alzheimer's disease are the changes that occur in the brain. Neurons, or nerve cells, lose their ability to communicate with each other and eventually die. This neuronal death is often accompanied by the accumulation of abnormal protein fragments, known as beta amyloid plaques, and twisted strands of another protein, tau, forming neurofibrillary tangles. These changes typically start in a region of the brain called the hippocampus, which is crucial for memory. As the disease progresses, it spreads to other parts of the brain, affecting functions such as language, attention, and even personality. So, how prevalent is Alzheimer's disease? Well, it's the most common cause of dementia, accounting for 60 to 80% of cases. It's estimated that around 50 million people worldwide are living with dementia, and this number is expected to triple by the year 2050. While age is the most significant risk factor, Alzheimer's is not a normal part of aging. It's a disease that strikes the old and, less commonly, the young. It's also more prevalent in women than in men, and genetics can play a role, with certain genes increasing the risk. Now that we have a basic understanding of Alzheimer's disease, its characteristics, effects on the brain, and prevalence, we can begin to unravel the intriguing connections to H. pylori infection. Now, let's delve into the fascinating science behind how these two seemingly unrelated conditions could be linked. It might seem strange to think that a stomach infection could have anything to do with a brain disease, right? It's a question that has puzzled scientists for quite some time. But as they delve deeper into the world of microbiomes and their impact on our health, the link between Helicobacter pylori, a common stomach bacteria, and Alzheimer's disease, a devastating neurodegenerative disorder, is becoming increasingly clear. Several studies have found a potential connection between H. pylori infection and an increased risk of Alzheimer's. One notable study published in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease found that individuals with H. pylori infection were significantly more likely to develop Alzheimer's than those without the infection. But how does a stomach infection relate to a brain condition? The answer might lie in the inflammatory response. H. pylori is known to cause chronic inflammation in the stomach lining. This inflammation, if left unchecked, can lead to ulcers and other gastrointestinal issues. But it's not just the stomach that's affected. Chronic inflammation can trigger a systemic response, leading to inflammation throughout the body, including the brain. This is where the link to Alzheimer's comes into play. Alzheimer's disease is characterized by the buildup of beta-amyloid plaques and tangles in the brain. These plaques and tangles damage and destroy brain cells, leading to memory loss, cognitive decline, and other symptoms of Alzheimer's. And guess what? Inflammation plays a major role in this process. Inflammatory molecules can cross the blood-brain barrier, a protective shield that normally keeps harmful substances away from the brain. Once inside, these molecules can trigger further inflammation and contribute to the buildup of harmful plaques and tangles. And this is where H. pylori comes in. By causing chronic inflammation, H. pylori could potentially contribute to this harmful process, increasing the risk of Alzheimer's. Of course, it's important to remember that correlation does not imply causation. Just because there's a link between H. pylori infection and Alzheimer's doesn't mean that one necessarily causes the other. More research is needed to fully understand this complex relationship, but the evidence so far suggests that managing H. pylori infection could be one way to potentially reduce the risk of Alzheimer's. And this isn't just about Alzheimer's. The potential link between H. pylori and brain health underscores a larger point. Our gut health can have a profound impact on our overall well-being, including our brain health. Our bodies are interconnected systems, and a problem in one area can often ripple out, affecting other areas in ways we might not expect. So, it seems that our gut health could have more impact on our brain health than we previously thought. The study of the gut-brain axis is still in its infancy, but it's an exciting field with the potential to transform how we understand and treat a wide range of health conditions, including Alzheimer's. Let's recap what we've learned about the connection between H. pylori infection and Alzheimer's risk. We started our journey by understanding the basics of H. pylori infection, a common bacterium found in the stomach. This sneaky microorganism can live in our digestive tract for years without causing any symptoms, but when it does, it can lead to ulcers and even stomach cancer. Next, we dove into the complex world of Alzheimer's disease, a progressive brain disorder that slowly destroys memory and thinking skills, and eventually, the ability to carry out simple tasks. It's a heartbreaking condition that affects millions of people worldwide. Then, we bridged the gap between these two seemingly unrelated health issues. We explored the scientific evidence that suggests a potential link between H. pylori infection and an increased risk of Alzheimer's. Various research studies have shown that the chronic inflammation caused by H. pylori infection may trigger neurological changes, contributing to Alzheimer's disease. However, it's crucial to remember that more research is needed to fully understand this connection. It's also important to note that having H. pylori infection doesn't necessarily mean you'll develop Alzheimer's and vice versa. In the end, it all comes down to maintaining good health. It's not just about one aspect of our bodies, but rather a holistic approach that includes everything from our gut to our brain. Remember, maintaining good health is not just about one aspect of our bodies, but rather a holistic approach that includes everything from our gut to our brain. As we conclude, it's important to remember that while there is a suggested link between H. pylori infection and Alzheimer's risk, more research is needed. It's also crucial not to jump to conclusions or let fear dictate your actions. If you have concerns about H. pylori infection or Alzheimer's disease, it's always best to consult with your healthcare provider. They can provide you with accurate information based on the latest research and guide you through any necessary tests or treatments. Moreover, let's not forget that maintaining good overall health is one of the most effective ways to reduce the risk of many diseases. This includes eating a balanced diet, staying physically active, getting enough sleep, and managing stress. These are all critical components of a healthy lifestyle that can go a long way in promoting your well-being. And with that, we've reached the end of our discussion on the intriguing link between H. pylori infection and Alzheimer's risk. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, stay curious and stay healthy.